Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Lynn and in this video I want to show my swatch book of my various water-based media. So I picked up a bunch of supplies during the Spellbinders spring cleaning warehouse sale. And so I've swatched all of those out. Haven't had much opportunity to play with them outside of just swatching them, but what I'll do is, as I sort of flick through and show you each of them, I'll give you my initial impressions. And bear in mind, it's just my initial impressions based off of my swatching. And so I'm sure as I get to use the products more, gain some familiarity with them, and use them in different techniques and whatnot, I'm sure my opinions will change and develop over time. Let me first start off by saying that I'm going to be going through more than just what I picked up during the Spellbinders warehouse clearance sale. And so this video may be a bit on the long side. So what I'll do is I'll timestamp this video so that I'll if there's a particular product that you're interested or most interested in seeing, just hover over the timeline at the bottom, and then you should see little bookmark chapter titles, and you can hop straight to that product and see the swatch and get whatever opinion I might have about it. Let me first tell you a little bit about my swatching technique. I tried to stay consistent across all of these different types of products, and at the core of it, I'm using this awesome stamp from the May Clear Stamp of the month, and I've been using it for swatching because I think it's fantastic. Maybe that's how they I'm guessing that's maybe how they designed it to be used. I'm not 100%, but the set looks like this, and you get this solid triangle stamp too, where you can stamp in the middle here. So I've used this to swatch out my ink pads, but I thought it would be great for these water-based markers that I have as well. Actually, so here's just a swatch of my ink pads. So what I did for these, what I'll show today in today's video is I stamped with VersaFine Onyx Black ink, and then that's a pigment ink, and then I clear heat embossed that so that I have that nice little raised edge, and each of these wedges is kind of a little bit, there's like a little bit of a barrier between each one, so that that helps to contain the color and prevent bleeding into the next section. The paper that I'm swatching on, and this is going to be true for all of these water-based media that I swatched out. This is a mixed media paper from Canson. So I thought this would be a good, like an in-between of cardstock versus watercolor paper. It's not as thick as watercolor paper. It's thin, like a good layering weight cardstock. But it does have a bit of that sort of texture and look of a watercolor paper. It's just not designed to take as much water as a true watercolor paper would. So that's the same paper throughout, same little octagon with the heat embossing throughout. So let me go ahead and flip to... So this first set is my set of Ohuhu. I think they're called the Aqua Natural Brush markers. So it's a water-based marker that has a true brush tip. Basically, think they're trying to compete with the Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers. So kind of a competitor to that, if you're familiar with that product. I started swatching at number 2 here, and this was the first thing I was swatching out. So then I kind of realized midstream that I don't want to use this technique of swatching. And then when I got here, I couldn't remember if I picked up the right color and started coloring the correct section. And so these 4 I swatch again. You'll see them at the end. The technique that occurred to me and then I started to apply consistently for the rest that you'll see is I laid down solid color at the top here. And this was a marker. So just took the marker, laid down solid color until it was saturated. Like I couldn't get the color any darker than what you see here. So that's basically as saturated as what the marker was going to allow, or what the paper was going to allow. And then I took, in this case, a probably this exact watercolor brush, damp but not, dripping with water. So basically I would rinse in some clean water and dab off onto a paper towel just to remove that excess water. And then, so the brush would have been moist, but not dripping with water, and not, overly damp. And then I took it to just this left half and tried to pull that color out. And that way I could see, okay, what's the color, direct marker to paper, what does that look like at, 100%. So that's one thing I was trying to learn by revamping my swatching technique to only pull out half. Although, a full wheel of this solid color would have been gorgeous. but I like for my swatches to tell me a thing or two about the product. So that was the first, to see what the color looks like at 100% marker to paper, to see what the payload is when you pull that color out. So do you lose a lot in saturation? Some colors you do, like here, you can barely see any color at all. Some colors not so much. This is a little bit lighter, but almost consistent top to bottom. And then the next thing I was hoping to learn is how quickly not how quickly, but does the direct marker to paper set to where you see the actual original line where you originally laid down the color, or do you get a nice smooth blend? Does that completely dissolve and lift, so that you don't see that line anymore? And as I was kind of doing this, I was trying to not rush, like, okay, scribble and then as quickly as possible get my brush to that area to pull that out. But at the same time, I wasn't dawdling either. I wasn't like deliberately working in slow motion. I tried to kind of work as naturally as I would, scribble it down, take my time to get nice full, edge to edge coverage, do what I needed to do with my water brush and pull that color out. So, for this color, for example, you can see the payload on the color really starts to dissipate, because the original color is a lot more pigmented than when you pull it out. And then some colors, like I think it's very prominent with this one and that one, you can definitely see where the original color was laid down. You can see that definitive line there. And so there's a little bit of variability between colors in terms of how they react to this technique. So not super duper consistent, but I do love all of the colors. They're really, really nice and bright. And now that I've done this exercise, I know which colors set a little bit more quickly than others. For example, this green here, very, very definitive line. Maybe some of the ones that are faint, I can still see it, but it's rather faint. Maybe I could have worked, a little bit harder, scrubbed at this a little bit more to really dissolve that. I was intentionally not trying to like pay any extra attention to any one color. I was trying to be really consistent with my methodology, just so that I can get a really fair comparison, and then seeing it maybe be able to kind of conclude whether, like, I don't think I could scrub that line out. It seems pretty definitive, but a more subtle line like that, maybe if I took the water brush to it a little bit more quickly, I wouldn't have that, or maybe I could work at that a little bit and get it to completely dissolve. So, so the colors are gorgeous. I like the palette, but looking between the colors, they just react differently. Like, you can't even see, or at least I can't even see the original line. This just, if everything was like this, that would be like awesome. But it's not. There's actually in some areas, with some colors, it's the line is rather stark, and others it's a little bit more passable because it's subtle. This is because I didn't do any anti-static powder, so this is just clear, a little clear heat embossing powder that I didn't knock off. And so for the rest, I wasn't lazy. I did my anti-static and all of that good stuff and good heat embossing technique, and so I get less of that later as we go. But I love the colors. Like, look how bright and vibrant these colors are. Beautiful palette. Love these markers. And the reason why I got these is because I wanted to get into watercolor markers, but you know, the Zig clean color markers pretty expensive. Caran brush markers are pretty expensive. So I got into alcohol markers with the Ohuhu brand, and I thought, okay, I'm going back to Ohuhu because it's a nice affordable brand. Okay, so then now onto my Nuvo Aqua Flow pens. These generally get sold in sets of 3. But they're in kind of a weird order. They're in numerical order here, and I'm not sure the rhyme or reason behind the numbering system, but these are beautiful. The colors really saturated, really nice. Look at how well, like, it pulls out. No color setting. There's no discernible line from where that original color was laid down, marker direct to paper. Payload on the color is really, really great. Better for some colors than others. So you can see here, this gets a little bit washed out as compared to the color at 100%. But some of these are, like this one in particular, this is a gorgeous kind of wine color. It's, I guess this is more wine. What is this? Oh, it's just gorgeous. But really fantastic. And consistent. That's the other thing. Because when you look at all of these, whatever formulation they use, they figured it out to where all of the colors react the same when you take a water brush to them and try to kind of pull that color out. In terms of like how diluted it is, and you know how saturated that color stays. Part of it is some variability with how much water was in my brush when I took the brush to pull that color out. But you know, part of it also might be the color itself. It seems like the lighter the color is, the easier it is to kind of dilute, which is not too surprising, although there is a pretty big color difference between this direct to paper and this with the water brush pulling out the color. But really love how reliable, how consistent all of the pens react to water. So I really appreciate that, because then you kind of, there's some predictability there. And when you go to use it for any sort of technique, you don't have to worry about, oh, was this one of those colors where I have to be like super fast or else the color is kind of set. So there's, you know, that sort of thing I definitely appreciate. Okay, now getting into, oh, not yet. So these are Mermaid Markers from Jane Davenport. I've had these for a little while now. But look at those colors. Also really bright, very saturated, kind of like the Ohuhus. And the difference, though, is that like the Nuvo Aquaflow pens, they are beautiful. They react to water very consistently, and you don't get any discernible kind of color setting from where it was originally, where the color was originally laid down to onto the paper. So very beautiful. The payload and the color is gorgeous. You don't lose too much color saturation, and it's just awesome. You know, I've loved my Mermaid markers for a while now, and so these are fantastic. But I couldn't. One of the reasons why I bought these Inkredible ink bottles is I was hoping, even though I didn't see any common names, I was hoping to try to find some refills for some of the colors that I'm low on. Basically low on all of my blues, because that's my favorite color. So Byron Bay I'm low on, Siren I'm low on, Blue Bottle I'm low on. There aren't direct matches. Some of the Inkredible inks that the ones that I bought anyway, and I don't have the full collection, but they're close but not exact. But these, I feel like, are probably formulated the same as the Mermaid markers. Gorgeous, gorgeous, bright colors at 100%, and then beautiful how they react to water. So look, there's like you lose no saturation with this. So just that pigment payload is amazing. This looks just the same as that. Same with this, same with that also, you know, kind of, this is pretty close. Maybe that one you start to lose a little bit towards the end. But yeah, I mean, just fantastic. And these ones are a little bit different because it's not in marker form. So these come in 1 ounce bottles with sort of an eyedropper tip. And so how I swatch these, and maybe that's why I'm not seeing too much of a differentiation as the color gets pulled out. But basically, if you imagine this being the bottle, I marked a line across of ink, and then I took a water brush marker, probably this exact one, and you know, the tip was wet, but not like dripping, sopping wet with water. So, you know, I would clean the brush in between each color, dab it off on a paper towel to remove excess water and make sure that it was completely clean. And then I used it to basically fill in that thin line of ink that came from the bottle, moved it around so that I had, I colored in basically this entire sort of top of the triangle wedge here. And then without rinsing, without doing anything else, I used that same brush and I started to pull the color down. So, I mean, that might be why, because the technique is a little bit different and I'm already kind of applying a little bit of water, whatever's on the brush bristles, to do that initial lay down. So that might be why this looks so consistent, but like I said, really beautiful, just in terms of there not being any color that's set, and all of the colors are gorgeous as well. So really love how this performed. So love that. I also picked up the Jane Davenport Aqua Pastels. These are, I think they market it as watercolor on a stick, but basically I believe they are similar to gelatos. And so it's kind of like a crayon, and how I swatch those in the video is different. I swatched in the video, my swatching video, where I swatch out all of the Spellbinders media that I picked up. I swatched it in my mixed media little notebook, because that's where I have my gelatos swatched out, and that way I can kind of compare between the two. But I wanted to see it in this format too, so I just, off camera, I went back and I swatched it this way. And basically what I did, similar to what I did in my swatching video, is I scribbled color in this top section here, all the way across. Then I took, you know, a water brush pen, And again, rinsing in between each color, dabbing on a paper towel to remove that excess water, and whatever moisture was on here, that's what I used to dissolve the crayon and pull that color out. Now with this, I did a little bit of side to side kind of scrubbing in a sense, just to try to encourage that pigment to dissolve, but I didn't intentionally kind of pay kind of more time or attention to any one color over the other. I just did an initial scribble across just to loosen that pigment, and then I pulled down. And I tried to be consistent across all of these because what I was trying to learn was, just as with the direct marker to paper, do you see any of the initial markings where or any markings of where that initial color was laid down? And you can in some of these. So, you can see some of those scratches in the Frida color here, and in Dolly you can see some of those little up and down kind of scratch marks. So so that's one thing that I was trying to learn, because with gelatos, it is kind of tough to get when you go dry, crayon to dry paper, and then you take a wet brush with my gelatos, and it looks like with these as well, it can be hard to really dissolve all of that color to where you don't see any of that, original laydown of color. So some colors were kind of okay, like this, the Toulouse-Lautrec. All of these colors were named after artists. so that one looks okay, but pretty much most all of them, you can see a little bit of it. Then what I wanted to do was just experiment with blending. So I don't know if it's called this. I just gave it this name. So kiss blending, in my head, means coloring and then stopping in the center with one color from the other side, and stop to where they meet in the center and they just kiss up with each other. They don't overlap. So when I laid down the dry color, I just scribbled until the halfway point with pink, scribbled with the halfway point with the blue, no overlapping of the two dry color on paper. And then when it came to applying the water, I dissolved from this far end of the pink, pulled the color out, stopped when I reached the center, rinsed my water brush, went to the far opposite end, and then kind of dissolved this color, pulled it out. This time, as I reached the center, I went all the way across, and then back and forth just in the middle, and pulled it down. So that's how I did this sort of kiss blending, just to see how they look. And I picked, two colors where I knew I would be able to sort of see the original laydown. And then I picked two colors where you don't as much see that original color that's been laid down. And of course, this looks much more smooth. It blends much more nicely. But this blends too. You get a nice purple in the middle here. So that was sort of whatever, kiss blending, what I'm calling it anyways. Maybe there's a proper name for that. Then what I wanted to test out was how reactive to water are these Aqua Pastels after you lay down after the initial lay down and waiting a good chunk of time. So I waited 12 plus hours after scribbling down some of these colors before taking my water brush pen to them. The idea being that, okay, does it set and become more permanent the longer it has to dry, and then, becomes essentially immovable, or can you still lift that color after, you know, a good chunk of time. And 12 hours I feel like is pretty long. Most things that are meant to be permanent, or at least semi-permanent, I think, you know, 12 hours is a reasonable amount of time. Like, for example, the Albrecht Dürer watercolor pencils I have, and the Faber-Castell gelatos that I have, they operate that way, where when you initially put down the color, you have, you know, a period of time where it's highly water reactive. You can dissolve that pigment and move it around, and then, but if you let it set and dry, that color is going to be locked in and permanent. And so I wanted to see if these reacted the same way, and they do not. So you can see after 12 hours, I took my brush, and I just wanted to, this is sort of what the kiss blending looked like, where, you know, the two colors butt up in the middle here. They just touch and kiss in the center, but they don't overlap. And I just wanted to pull that out once after 12 hours. Maybe I'll go back in and pull this out after 24 hours. But my suspicion is that it's not going to be permanent, and it's going to dissolve in the water. That would be my guess, but maybe I should do it just to see if that's truly going to be the case. But you know, it's not to say that this is better or worse than gelatos because of that property. It's just good to know, because if you are doing something where this is meant to be like a first layer of many to come on top, and there are maybe water-based techniques that are gonna go over top of this, it's good to know that that's going to reactivate, you know, this Aqua Pastel and lift this, or have this color start to mix with whatever other media is, water-based media is put over top of it, which may alter the look. Whereas with the gelatos, you can do techniques like glazing, where you let it dry, you let that first layer dry, and then go over top of it with another wash of color. And so you'll know that that first layer is going to more or less stay just as it was, and it's not going to reactivate and change the color of whatever you're putting over top. So something to keep in mind, because you know, it's useful to do this so that I know and I can remember that that's how these work, and you can use it to your advantage. But you definitely want to make sure that you know that it reacts this way, so that you can, or at least, you know, in my mind, I can keep that in the back of my mind as I use this on projects, so that I can more predictably kind of know what results I'm gonna get, and I can use it to my advantage, or choose not to use this and use gelatos instead if I want something to be more fixed. So that's my Aqua Pastels. Then I also picked up a few Fun Stampers Journey products, and this is their liquid color, and this also comes in a similar bottle as the Jane Davenport Inkredible Inks. And form factor is very similar, has that sort of eyedropper nozzle tip. The difference I would say is that the Jane Davenport really is like an eyedropper, where I think if you held it upside down, the drops would come out. Whereas with this one, I feel like you get more control, because I think if you held it upside down, it would not, the liquid would not drop out. You actually intentionally have to squeeze for it to come out. Which I like, because then you get more control over how much liquid comes out. But I did swatch them the same way, where tipping the bottle out, squeezing very gently, I drew a faint line of the ink, took my, you know, water brush pen to color in that nice solid sort of top section, then with the same pen tried to pull that color out. And it just was not having it. It was not pulling. Like, once I got that color And, you know, it took the same amount of time as it took for the Jane Davenport inks to get that nice kind of solid block at the top. So it's not like I was rushing, and again, I wasn't rushing, I wasn't dawdling, I was just trying to work at a nice, normal pace. But at some point, I was trying to be faster just to try to get it. That's why I was sloppy. So I was trying to get it to pull, and it wasn't. And it only took a couple of these swatches to realize, I think all of these are going to be this way. I should really maybe change up my technique. But then, in all fairness to everything else, I just want it to be consistent and just continue swatching all of the colors in the same way. And you can kind of see some colors pulled a little bit nicer. Like this one pulled out okay. These three really, I think, did okay. Fresh Sage did okay. Peaches and Cream maybe did okay as well. So some colors worked better than others. But what I wanted to do, just for my own kind of edification, and just to see a nicer swatch, to be honest, was how do they react if, instead of going direct to paper, I took a little bit of the ink, put it onto a clear acrylic block, like one of my stamping blocks, and in this case, I did mix in a little bit more water than, because when I pulled this out, I was just working with, you know, a like a damp but not super dripping wet brush to pull it out. But for these swatches here, I mixed the color on an acrylic block with more water than what was used here, and then I took that to paper, and then it went from the top to the bottom. And I think I did it twice, because when I did it with the first color, I realized, well, this is diluted quite a bit more because I've used more water to the amount of ink direct from the bottle. So each of these is colored in twice, but from that same original kind of pool that I mixed of the ink and a little bit of water. But they're gorgeous. I mean, you can see how smooth, how beautiful that is. And just like, okay, here, so Turbo Teal, 100% straight from the bottle versus mixed with water. So you can get anywhere in between that lightest little bit of Turbo Teal and this darkest Turbo Teal, which is the beauty of having these ink bottles, because, you know, even though I did pick up a fair range of them because they were on like super clearance, it was only $1 a bottle as opposed to $8 original retail price. But if it wasn't highly discounted like that, I would really only pick, you know, a few, maybe a handful or whatever. And, you know, you can dilute with water to get, you know, lighter versus more saturated, or even mix colors to create new colors, and so lots of flexibility with how to use these. And I'm glad I did this just so that I felt better about about this product, honestly, after swatching it this way. But it's good to know I should not go direct to paper with this ink. I can do that with the Jane Davenports, and that's not a problem, but, you know, not so much with these. I also picked up the Color Splash, also from Fun Stamper's Journey. These come in 2-ounce bottles and a spray nozzle. So the idea and why it's called Splash is that you would spray onto your paper. I wanted to see what the color looks like at 100%. So I basically just took my water brush, dipped it in the bottle, straight into the bottle, and then brushed or painted that top section. And then without rinsing or doing anything else, I pulled the color. And one thing I noticed was, this is Pineapple Smoothie. This is also Pineapple Smoothie. The difference is that I did this, and then I continued swatching, and I thought to myself, why is that one so grainy? And then this one's a little bit grainy as well. So the only thing I could think to do was shake the bottle. And I did that, and this is the result. It's much nicer. So I don't know why that's the case, and I'll read the bottle again later to see if it does recommend shaking before you start using it. But my guess though is because it's pigment based. Maybe the pigment doesn't dissolve 100% in water. And so it can kind of separate a little bit, and then you get sort of that graininess. I'm not sure. So that's the Color Splash. Then we have the Fun Stampers Journey Silks. These come in sort of like a little nail polish bottle with like a little brush as well. So I took the brush, painted on, a nice solid strip at the top here, and again, water brush pen, pulled the color out. And some of these are gorgeous. Some have a little bit of a shimmer. Cool Pool has a little bit of a shimmer. Bubblegum has a little bit of a shimmer. And the rest look pretty flat though in terms of color. They don't really... This one does feel like it has a little bit of like an enamel finish. These two that are a little bit shiny. So I'm wondering if that whole bit about some of them being having some enamel, I wonder if it's just certain colors that have that metallic sheen also have that little bit of enamel in them. So that's how those look swatched out, and they're gorgeous as well. Then I wanted to use the color splashes as indicated, so I assembled the spray bottle top nozzle, and I masked off this half, the right half, and then I spritzed the other half twice. And so this, look how gorgeous that is. Really beautiful. That's the Pineapple Smoothie, which is this color here. So straight from the bottle, it looks like that, but spritzed, through the spray, it looks like that. Then we have Outrageous Pink. That's how it looks spritzed. Here's how it looks straight. And because they're pigment, I'm guessing that's going to look beautiful on a dark or colored cardstock as well, because pigment inks sit on top of your paper as opposed to dissolving into your paper like a dye-based ink would. So because it sits on top, it has a better chance of actually being visible on a darker cardstock. This is Electric Lime, and with Electric Lime I have the Silk as well, so I splattered Silk on this side just to see how well the color matches, and it matches beautifully. This is Cool Pool, which looks like that at 100%, but spritzed out looks like that, and the Silk looks like that in spatter form. Citrus Cooler, same. Now with this, I did try to splatter only on the right half, but I did not mask off though, so some of the splatter might have crossed over here, but not all of this. This is just because I did spray twice, and I did two like full, like firm, full kind of trigger presses. If you do like a more weak partial trigger press, you'll get more splotch versus a fine mist. But all of these were just fully, like, two full trigger presses, and tried to aim as best I could. So that is the splashes, and so those are really cool, really super fun. Then the next thing that I did was I wanted to create my own splashes. So I took these little, I bought these on Amazon. They're 5 milliliters. They're tiny little fine mist little bottles. They're fantastic because if you look at the intake tube, it goes all the way to the bottom and even bends a little bit. So you know you're going to be able to get like just about everything out of this. Whereas if you see an intake bottle, an intake tube, and like it's let's see if I can show it, and it's sort of just suspended before like it hits the bottom of your whatever your tube is, it's going to be really hard to use everything up in here, at least through the spray, because that intake tube isn't completely submerged in whatever liquid you have in here. So this is really nice because it goes all the way down to the bottom, curves a little bit, so you've got a better shot of getting every little bit out of this. And I like the little size. It's just 5 milliliters of fluid, but and I got a pack of 30 of them for a really good price. I think it was like $12, $12.50 or something like that. And the reason why I got these is so that I can create like my own little mini misters. And what I did with these two is I filled this about like 1/4 to 1/3 of an inch with water, distilled water. Then I took 5 drops of liquid color in one, made up the second one with 5 drops of the Jane Davenport Inkredible ink, and you know, swirled it around, mixed it around a little bit, and again gave it two good, you know, full pumps of the mister. And this is what I got. So both of these are both colors are named Limeade, but of course they're different brands, so they look different. But let me take this to the 100% so that you can see. Now, of course, this is diluted with a lot of water, so the color is going to be very different, but this is Limeade from the Liquid Color. And of course, if you want something like a little bit truer to the 100%, you can always increase how much of the liquid color you put in as compared to how much water. So if you want a lighter color, you just dilute it more. If you want a darker, more saturated color, then don't dilute as much with water. So here, Limeade at 100% and then diluted 5 drops to the same quantity of water as what this was diluted. But you can actually kind of, and this didn't occur to me until just now, but these are as best as I could manage. I didn't like weigh everything out and measure it to the T. But as best as I could manage, I tried to get the same ratio of water to fluid, or to ink. Now, of course, it's going to be pretty different because even in a eyedropper bottle, like how much each drop comes out is going to be different even from the same bottle, much less between 2 different bottles. So, you know, I can't control for everything, but I tried to put 5 drops of one of each of the colors to roughly the same amount of water. And you can see, like, you know, how much 5 drops gets diluted here. So, so maybe there's not, like, as much pigment, I suppose, where 5 drops of this into about the same amount of water. There's some, it's lighter for sure, it's less saturated, but it's still pretty, some areas, especially maybe areas that got like a second layer, because I did spritz twice, they're pretty close to the 100% color. They're not too far off. So I would, you know, I've only done this once, so it's too soon to draw any conclusions, but it just brings to mind the question, you know, is this more pigmented? Because, and maybe that explains why it's so hard to move too. It's so like saturated in pigment, that would, if that were true, it would mean that this ink would go further because you can put more water to it before losing saturation, whereas roughly the same amount of ink to the same amount of water, and I got a lot that's so desaturated compared to the original color. So, you know, interesting. These are all really interesting experiments, and like I said, they're just sort of my initial play. All of these splashes, by the way, I have done on regular cardstock and not my mixed media or watercolor paper, because I I want to be able to use these with my card making, and so I wanted to see how they react on paper as well. So that might be another reason why the color looks a little bit different. Then I should also, I guess, mention I did play with the this. So these are the waterproof brush pens from Jane Davenport. And I picked up the, it's called Hot Vinyl. It's meant to be glossy, have a glossy shine and finish to it. And this one is black lace, which is meant to just be matte. Fantastic form factor of the pens themselves, because you can see which has that glossy shine. That's the gloss one. This more matte finish is your matte pen. However, if you look at the product, and it's not just because you're not picking it up on camera, I cannot see it to my naked eye any difference between these two. There is no glossy finish to that. None whatsoever. They look exactly the same from every single angle I can think to to look at it. No gloss. So yeah, that's a little disappointing. I actually thought that this gloss would actually perform a little bit like my black glaze pen, which I use a lot, because this does have a nice shine and even a little bit of a sort of dimensional, like an enamel finish. And that's just not the case. So if you are interested in these products and you're hoping to get that nice glossy shine, maybe it's the paper that I'm using. This is just regular, super smooth cardstock, but I didn't get any glossiness here. So that's one thing. However, the other property I was trying to test was it's supposed to be waterproof. That's the main reason why I got these, because I want to use these in some of my art journal, do some like mark making on my, journal pages, maybe outline some of the die cuts, or maybe some sentiments, have that nice little boxed outline. And I want it to be essentially permanent, so that if I continue to add to the art journal page anything that has any water to it, I don't want whatever I marked with these to bleed or react to that water. So what I did was drew out these lines. I waited 12 hours, and maybe I'll do this test and wait like 30 minutes, but I waited 12 hours and took a water pen to half of it to see if I could move any of this, and none of it moved. So waterproof it is. It's not reactive to water at all, and I'll probably do another test, like I said, to see, can I wait like a more reasonable amount of time, like 10 minutes, for it to really set. And so that'll be the next experiment. But yeah, a little disappointed that there's no difference between gloss versus matte. And I didn't mention it, but this here is just from the Jane Davenport fountain ink pen that I picked up. And I think I left this in my swatch video where I actually put the cartridge in for the first time. And something to note, you have to apply a fair amount of force to get this in here, because the ink cartridge has just like a little bit of plastic at the end that's containing the ink, so that it doesn't run out of the tube right away. And to load it into your pen, you unscrew this is actually two pieces. You unscrew them, you put this cartridge with this side into this end of the pen, and inside the pen barrel here there's a bit of hard plastic that will pierce that little bubble, that little bit of plastic that's keeping all of that ink inside. And you have to apply a fair amount of force to actually get that bit of plastic to be punctured. And I was worried about breaking something, didn't want to apply too much force, but I knew it wasn't working because when I put it in really firmly, what I thought was firm enough, and then I screwed this end back in, as I was writing, I could hear it rattle. So if you can hear your cartridge rattling, it's not in all the way. So basically what I had to do, let's say this is the cartridge and this is that ink barrel. So you're supposed to put it in until you can hear it audibly kind of burst that bubble, and it'll kind of click. Because I had a hard time pushing it in this way, what I did was, remember, this is the cartridge. I put it in like this, and then I flipped it like this, because this is flat on this end, and this would be the tip of my pen. I pushed down, and doing it that way, I was able to generate enough force, and also kind of more kind of straight up and down, be able to push it, as opposed to trying to really shove it in that way. So that's what worked for me. Although I watched reviews and unboxings of people using this, and they had no problem. So maybe I'm just like a little weakling. but yeah, push it in nice and firm and wait, listen for that click, and that's how you know you've got it in tightly. And if it doesn't rattle as you're writing and you shake the pen, then you're good to go. So yes, a rather long video. And I hope you got out of this video what you were hoping to learn. I will definitely be using these products more and more in my videos, and so as I use them more and get to know them better, I'm sure my opinions of them will develop and change over time. So just bear that in mind. What I'm sharing with you is just kind of my initial thoughts after doing this exercise of swatching them out, and having now a different range of products from different brands, being able to kind of compare and contrast how they react to water as compared to other similar products. Doesn't mean that any of them are better or worse than others. It just means that maybe some are better for some techniques, and others are geared more towards other techniques. So that's all I have for today. Thank you again for joining me, and until next time, happy crafting and have a fantastic day. Bye.